Hello everyone and welcome to the Math Lab. My name is Jason Gregerson, and in this video we're going to look at alternative inputs to Mathematica syntax in Mathematica. So the idea is last time we learned that we could use Wolfram language code and type that into our computation. In this video we're going to look at some alternatives. We'll look at freeform input and palette inputs. We'll start with freeform input. So the idea here is we can actually type in natural language and have Mathematica interpret that and do its best to generate the associated Mathematica code. So we have some examples of things we'd like to do here, and to actually use freeform input, all we do is start an input cell and type in equals, and we'll get this little orange equal, and then we just type in our request in natural language. So for instance, if I want to plot a function, I could say plot a function, or plot the function. We'll say x squared minus 4 from, how about 0 to 3. Notice I've just typed this information in, and now I'll just evaluate the cell. And Mathematica will send this information to Wolfram Alpha, and it will do its best to do the calculation. So we see here's a couple things. One, it's generated the plot. Two, I can actually hover over this content and I see the actual command that Mathematica would use if I use the Wolfram language code. And I can actually select that and it will replace that with the actual code, which I could then modify. So using freeform input is actually a great way to practice or generate the code as a stepping stone to learning the code. Let's try another one though, because what we see here is we can do mathematical stuff, but actually because this connects to Wolfram Alpha, we can access all the data sets that are built into Wolfram Alpha. So as we can see some of the examples here, I could say what's the Scrabble score of the word SYZYGY, and freeform input will gather information and it will generate that score. Now with all these searches, there's also a little plus symbol that's next to the output, and if we click on that, it will just generate more information about our requests. So it will just kind of look at peripheral topics for whatever our request was, and so we can kind of scroll through those, and if anyone interests us, we can just simply hover over it, click on it, and it will use that pod to replace what our request was. So that's using freeform input. The other style of input we could use is using the palettes. So the palettes are useful for a variety of reasons. One, it's very useful as a stepping stone for learning code, and so we can see that by just going up here to the top, clicking palettes, and the one we're going to look at is the classroom assistant palette. So when we click on that, we'll generate this thing over here to the right. We see a bunch of different sections: calculator, navigation, basic commands, so on and so forth. So we can use the basic command section to actually see some different things we enter. For instance, I could calculate pi or the square root of something, but if I select 2D over here, the first one is plot. If I put my cursor in a math cell and then I click on the plot from the palette, it's going to give me the structure for the plot command. And so here I have that structure, and where it says function, I could just put my cursor there and then type in a function, and I can go over here to variable, state what that is, and then put in my minimums and my maximum values, and then I could run that cell. So I can use the palette kind of like a calculator to put in some calculations. Now the other thing we can use is we can use the palette to generate some typesetting. So for instance, if I go to the bottom section here at typesetting, I can see a lot of symbols. I can see here superscript. I can click to the next one over here and see some Greek letters. For instance, I could come over here to pi, and if I click on pi, I can see that numerical value of pi, or I can see that symbol pi. But not only will it just generate these symbols and these calculations, but almost more importantly, if I hover over any of these icons in the palette, it will give me the shortcut commands, the keystroke commands, to generate them. So if I hover over pi, it says the keyboard entry is escape, P, escape. So if I were to go back into a math cell and hit escape button, I'll generate this little 3-dot symbol, and then I type the letter P and then hit the escape key again, and that's the keyboard shortcut for generating pi. So there's some useful ones that we're going to use all the time that you should really just be strong on. For instance, if we go back to the palette and I click this icon, I see the superscript, it will tell me the shortcut is Control-6 or Control caret. And so if I want to say pi squared, instead of just going to the caret hitting 2, if I hit Control-6, I can get that superscript, hit my 2, and use the arrow over to get out of that exponent, and that will be pi squared. So if I want to say pi squared divided by 3, we have a keyboard shortcut for that. It would just be Control and the division symbol. So if I hit Control slash, well, now I have that nice clean looking fraction symbol. I can put something in the denominator here, and now I could evaluate that, and I'd see not only pi, but pi squared over 2. So these are just some of the shortcuts I can generate from the palettes, but if I'm ever interested in anything else, I could scroll back up here to basic calculations and look for other things and just hover over those icons to see what the shortcuts are. Now the last thing I can do is I can use the writing and format section to do some styling of my notebook. For instance, if you were to open up a brand new notebook, it wouldn't have all this coloring to it. It would look like just a white, clean description here. What we see in our notebooks is that this cell is colored green, this one is colored in some other colors. Well, these are all stylized notebooks to help us distinguish different cell types. If you want to do some styling, what you can do is just go over here to your palette, click the writing and formatting, and there's some styling shortcuts here. So for instance, I could click on a cell like this cell, and if I wanted to change the background color, there's a little drop down for that, so I could change that to blue. If I wanted to add a border, I could add some sort of frame or some border to these contents. So if you ever want to do any styling, this is a nice resource for that as well. So in this video we covered Freeform Input, and we covered how to use some general palettes and all the useful things we can do with those. And that concludes this video. Thank you very much.